What we should worry about now is reinstalling the motherboard and all of the other components. First thing that we're going to do is pull all of the cabling through the back. Boom, super simple. Now that the cabling is through, we're going to install the motherboard. This is a fairly easy step to do. What you do is you align the back I/O up with the dust shield on the back of your case. This is quickly turning into a how to build a PC video, but I really don't care. I need to make something. Alright, take your back I/O and line it up with the shield on the back. It should just slide right in, and boom. I say boom, I can't actually see because I'm trying to, oh crap, kick the camera. I am awesome at this, I know. Okie dokie. Now that you have that in place, you're gonna grab your screwdriver and all of your screws again. And using the mounting screws, obviously, we're gonna mount the motherboard to the chassis. Now then, as I'm doing this, I just realized you're really supposed to put all of the components into the motherboard before you mount it, but I don't like simple stuff. It's just too easy. No, what it really is I'm just an idiot. What you want to do is put all your stuff on first, that way you can get a good view of everything, but I'm just too lazy to take it all out again. But I probably will have to do that anyhow, so whatever, here we go. Once you have your motherboard all screwed in, we can mount the CPU. If you've watched any how to build a computer video, you'll know that the gold triangle in the corner lines up with the triangle on the motherboard. So for this, being an AM4 socket, you're going to lift up the retention arm, line it up, and bam, it slides right into place. If you don't get yours, well, then you didn't do it right. On this motherboard, let me see if I can zoom in. That was way too painful. On this socket, you'll see that there is a little triangle in the bottom corner there. This will line up with the golden triangle on your CPU. Once you've lined up all the pins to the holes, it should slide right in without any trouble. However, do give it just a little wiggle back and forth to make sure it's seated correctly. Then what you're going to do is push down the retention arm, it snaps into place, and bada bing, bada boom. That bad boy ain't going anywhere. Before we mount our cooler, let's put on the RAM. If you have an air-cooled cooler, it will sometimes, not always, but sometimes, it can block off your RAM slots. I found this with my other cooler. I believe it was the one that came with this. I believe it was the AMD Stealth cooler, but it was a smaller form factor. However, it was wide, so it did cover up 2 of the slots. So, when you mount in your RAM, what you want to do is you line this little slit in there with the little notch on the board. Now then, make sure you don't put it in backwards, like I'm attempting to do. There you go. Make sure that it also, well, lines up. Because if not, you're gonna have a bad time. Bada bing, bada boom. Push it until it snaps. Bam! It's in there. Now then, this is the most scary part in my opinion, because you do have to apply a little bit of force to get it in there. Not too much though, because it might not be lined up. And if it's not lined up and you put too much force on it, well, you're gonna break yourself, either your motherboard or your RAM, or both. And neither one being broken is a good thing. Alright, there we go. That's all seated. Now then, we can move on to our cooler. we're ready to mount our cooler. However, we are missing one vital ingredient. Thermal paste. If you can, in theory, just apply your cooler directly to your CPU. I do not, however, recommend this because what thermal compound does is it fills in all the little gaps in between the CPU and your cooler. When the metal is machined, there's little tiny imperfections. These tiny imperfections make it so that your CPU and your cooler don't interact perfectly. Now, where thermal compound comes in is it bridges the gaps. Because it's slightly liquefied, I don't know, it's like, well, toothpaste almost. It fills in those tiny gaps with a compound that is extremely heat conductive. So that means that the heat can transfer through the top of your CPU into the thermal paste, through that, and into the bottom of your CPU cooler, allowing that heat to go to the cooler and then get whisked away into the air. So, on my last application of the thermal paste, it wasn't perfect. So, this time, I brought along handy dandy toothpick, mainly also because I lost the thermal spreader that came with the thermal paste. I'm just an idiot. Anyhow, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put a little teeny tiny blob, not too much, but not too little, a nice good glob of the stuff right in the middle of your CPU. Now then, I'm gonna take my toothpick now and spread it around on top of the CPU. Now then, you don't have to do this, but I would just like to because, you know, my computer, want to keep it nice and cool. Yeah, I'll just skip ahead to when this is all done. Alrighty, that's not a perfect application of thermal paste, but, you know, hopefully that'll do the trick. So, just gonna scrape off the last little bit onto the CPU, and call it a day for that. And now we're gonna mount ourselves our cooler. This being an NZXT cooler, you can't really see it all that well on camera, but it has a little NZXT symbol on the inside underneath all of the shiny, well, mirror. Alright, now that we've placed it onto the board, we're gonna ever so carefully screw it down. These screws have special little grooves cut into them that allow it to be screwed in with your fingers. It also has springs on it so that you'll have even pressure when it's being screwed in. When it comes to screwing down your CPU, don't ever screw the screws down all the way. You want to make sure that it's an even pressure. Well, you know, let me rephrase that. Don't ever screw your screws down all the way on the very first time. So don't screw this one down all the way and then go to this one and then that one all the way. You want to do them in even increments. That way, the pressure is spread evenly across the CPU, so it doesn't damage it, the board, and so that there's an even amount of pressure going across the entire thing. That way, the thermal paste can evenly spread. Now that our water cooler has been seated fully, we can now worry about screwing it to the top of the case. So here, let me just adjust the camera and I'll be back with you guys. Okay, now that we have that all worried about, we can now do cable management. So, this isn't going to be all the cable management, mind you. This is only going to be the things that we have plugged in so far. Okay, now what we're going to do is the front I/O. This is all the connectors that work with the front plugs, such as the USB 3.0, the USB, and power, such as the power button, not actually power to the whole motherboard. We'll get to that. For this case, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be feeding the power lines right through the side here. Then, as we reach around, we can pull them through, and now we can line them up with all of the interface here. We're all hooked up with that. Now then, pull the cable tight. Well, I shouldn't say tight. More, pull the cable taut on the back, and then we can feed through our USB 3.0 plug. This one gets plugged in right here. You can kind of get a fairly decent idea of where it goes because the holes on this unit are a lot thinner than the other ones. It also has this little teeny tiny tab right there. This lines up with the hole on the motherboard. Now then, we can slide that bad boy in. Hold on. Where is it going? Oh, it's got little slatches. All right, now we can slide this bad boy in. And bang, there we go, it's in. This one here, as it's labeled USB, goes over to the USB port. I'll show you where that is in a second. We also have our high definition audio cable. This one goes in a different spot. However, if you look on the two, you can see that the holes aren't exactly in the same places. This is how we can make sure that, well, they don't get plugged into the wrong ports. Alright, now we can plug in our high definition audio and USB cables. The high definition audio cable is the one that has the hole, or rather the lack of a hole, near the top corner. This one gets lined up with these pegs here. See? If you just reverse this image, you'll see that it fits into these slots perfectly. Now we can move on to our USB. This one is actually on the other side of the board, practically, as in compared to our audio. Audio is over here. Our USB, on the other hand, is over here. As you can see, this one, the lack of the hole, is in the corner. Man, I need to get it to focus. It's in the corner. So, this hole here does not have a little peg. Actually, both of these have a lack of a peg in the bottom corner. That will lead us to conclude that the USB gets plugged into that one. We'll plug it into this one for now, and I'll show you why in a second. We can now pull these cables taut, and boom. Most of the bottom is all ready to go. For me, I have one more cable. I have this. Now, this is kind of interesting, and most people probably will not have this cable. I have this cable because it's connected to my water cooler, the NZXT Kraken. Kraken. It has a USB slot at the top for the controls of the LEDs inside of it. This, however, does take up one of your USB slots, so it's kind of a trade-off, and in my opinion, it's a win-win. We can now take this cable, run it through the back hole in our case, and then up to the top, where it will come out this hole here. We can then drop it down and plug it in to the top of our water block, pull the wire taut, and boom, we're ready to rock and roll. In your case, you might have fans. Mine, however, all of the fans are plugged into a fan hub in the back, so I don't have to worry about that. What I do have to worry about, however, is that. The radiator and the fan. The radiator has a built-in pump, so we have to attach its pump line, which is this one, into the AIO pump slot on, or pins rather, excuse me, on the board. And plug it in to the AIO pump slot on your motherboard. There you go. Now then, our other cable is the cable for the fan. This is the one that most people will have. It looks identical to the AIO one, however, it has a much different purpose. Instead of running the pump, it runs the fan that keeps the water inside of the radiator cool. So we can use this one as our CPU fan. It will start beeping at you if you don't have a fan plugged in to the CPU slot. So in order to get away with that, and because in truth it does get kind of annoying, what we'll do is we'll plug it into the CPU fan header. And there we go. Now then, we're almost done. Now we have to worry about power and hard drives. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of these loose cables and pull them down and around the hard drive bay. That way we can get some of them out of the way and it looks just, you know, we can get some extra points for cleanliness, kind of. Yeah, that's not gonna work right now. I'm gonna worry about getting the hard drives in before we do that. So, we're gonna take our handy dandy little hard drive in its awesome release case, slide it in, give it a little push, and it snaps in awesomely. We're gonna do the same thing for the other hard drive. All you have to do is line it up, push it in, and bam! It's just as easy as that. Alright, now that we're done with that, we can worry about our power supply. This is the most annoying part of this case, is because it's so small. So, to make our lives a little bit easier, unlike what past Garrett did to put his computer together, this being a completely modular power supply, I'm going to do one different thing. Last time I put the stupid thing in there and then wired everything up. Ho, but don't worry everybody, Garrett learned his lesson from last time. What we're going to do instead is we're going to install all of the needed power into the power supply and then slide it in there and worry about the stupid cables after that. So what we're going to be needing for this is a cable to power our graphics card, our 20+4 pin for powering the motherboard, a cable to power the CPU, and a whole bunch of other ones to power the freaking hard drives on the back. Firstly, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting in the power for the motherboard. It should just snap right in there. And before you know it, it's in. Ta-da! After that, we can plug in our CPU power. Ta-da! Then we can plug in the power for our graphics card. and we can plug in the other stupid ones. Now that you're all done assembling your metal octopus, you can now slide it right into where it's supposed to sit and live inside of your computer tower. Now that we're done putting that stupid metal behemoth into the computer, you can run your 24-pin connector cable through to the front of your computer and plug it into the slot here. Now, grab the power to your CPU and put it through the top if you're working with this particular tower. If not, slide it through the side or the back or wherever the heck you can get it so that it ends up in this general vicinity. After it's through the top, you can take it and wrap it around to the side so that you can plug it into this one right here. Now then, mine uses 4 because gamer, but I've seen others where it takes only 4 pins. That's alright. Snap yours in. It's the same basic principle anywhere in the world. Push it in, make sure it's all snug, and boom. Pull the table taut. Pull the table? No. Pull the cable taut. Alright, we're one step closer. Now then, you're gonna take the power to your graphics card and slide it through the same slot that your 24-pin cable went through. On the other side, it should end up somewhere around here because that's where your graphics card's going. Now we can worry about your hard drives. Your hard drives use these kinds of ports for power, and well, this cable also has a couple Molex on the back of here. We can plug that into the fan hub, and then we can actually, have fans that spin, because that's useful. Anyways, what you're gonna do is, for this case in particular, you're gonna take your power supply cables and plug them in to where your hard drives are. A good rule of thumb for these cables are they're shaped like an L. That means they can only fit in one way because of the small little notch on the side that inhibits them from going in any other way. Very classy. Now then, we also have to worry about this cable right here. This is the one that's providing power to our fan hub up top. This allows us to, have power for our fans, which is kind of important if you don't want the thing to overheat. We're gonna take one of our leftover Molex and plug it straight into there. Boom, just as simple as that. Now then, here's the most important tip when it comes to cable management. Just push everything in there as tight as it will go. And hey, would you look at that, gamers? We're so much closer to being done. Finally, we have to worry about our 2 hard drives up here. These are going to be fairly simple because they're out in the open and we can use the connectors, which, like I said before, are shaped slightly like L's. That way, oh, please focus, there we go. That way, with a little notch showing you exactly where to line this thing up, you can't you can mess it up, but it's kind of hard to do so without being completely inept. Here, I'll show you on this one because it'll be super simple. What you do is on the hard drive, you see this long one here, how it has the little notch there? Well, you're gonna line that little tab with this little notch on here. Boom! As simple as that. We can now hang this right next to its brother. Now that we're done running power to our hard drives, we need one more vital thing. Cables. These cables are known as SATA cables. You can plug one end into your hard drive, and then it sends the information from your hard drive to your motherboard, and then you can access it there. What you're going to do is you're going to plug one end into your hard drive, take the other end, and run it through the slot in between the back of the motherboard shield and the front. Now that all those are through, we can now line them up and plug them in to our SATA slots on your motherboard. The same L-shaped principle applies to these cables as well. Remember, if you don't plug in your hard drives, then, well, you're not going to get any information from them. And with no information, it's going to be just about as useful as a rock with electricity running through it. Isn't that just lovely? Now, we can pull tight all of these cables to make the front look just a little bit more, not by much, but just a little bit more appealing. Now you can finally take your graphics card, line this up with this one right here. See how there's like that one and that one and that one and that one. Bada bing, bada boom. On this case, we have a special little locking mechanism that will hold our graphics card into place. However, I will be putting a screw on here just in case because, well, for safety, of course. The only thing left to do now is screw in the power supply. On. Alrighty, we're all done with the main parts of the computer. Now then, for the grand finales, trying to fit every last freaking cable into this thing, and then smushing on the side glass. I don't know how the heck this is gonna work, but we're gonna find out together now, ain't we? Something I forgot to do in my own stupidity was, plug in the graphics card. That's slightly useful. I mean, if you want it to run, that's pretty useful, but I mean, if not, if you just want it to sit there and look pretty, then you could always just do that. But now it's plugged in. I guess that's nice. Okay, so I got the thing on there, but it's reflective, so you can't really see. So we're just gonna cut to the really cool, nice, shots, like the cinematic, excellent, good stuff kind of shots. Alright, well, thank you so much for joining me on this fun little adventure, I guess you would call it. Taking apart this computer and fixing up all the dust issues and cleaning it out. Like I said before, I really do enjoy just going in and taking computers apart and seeing what makes them tick and then putting them back together again. If you liked this, go check out my other videos. I mean, there's not too many of them right now, but hopefully we'll be able to get those numbers up. Anyhow, I wish you all an absolutely fantastic day, evening, whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in the next video.